Hi, my name is Jessica Ansaga, and this is Beyond Ministry. I'm really excited to talk with you today about rest. The reason why I'm so excited is because as I was gathering all the things that I wanted to share with you today, I actually ended up with like 11 pages of information on rest, and I hadn't finished gathering all the stuff that I wanted to share. So then I realized there's probably enough stuff here to start writing a book. So I have started writing. Don't know that it's actually going to come to fruition. I've done this before and it didn't actually get birthed and released. But there's so much to say about rest and it's just bubbling up out of me. So for this episode today, I just condensed it down to 3 pages. So we're just going to do a crash course on rest and what it is. But there's more to come. Whether I'm going to make a few more podcasts or whether I'm going to write a book, I'm very excited about all the things that are bubbling up in me because rest is something that we have been missing so badly in the Western church. We just think that God wants us to strive and slave and that he's even pleased with our self-martyrdom. And it's not that case. It's not the way that it is at all. It's actually really gross what we've done and disobedient what we've done, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, there's a whole lot to discuss. So I'm excited to dive into it with you right now. First off, let's define rest so that we're all on the same playing field. So this is how I would define it. First off, rest is multi-dimensional. And here's how I define it. Multi-dimensional rest is when your body, soul, and spirit are operating from the shalom of God. Now, shalom is not just peace, but it means wholeness, well-being, and completeness. So God's design for rest is a physical, spiritual, and emotional, all-encapsulating rest that we are invited and created to live from. This rest is not just an invitation, but it's also a foundational principle that we have completely forgotten about, apparently, for the last hundreds of years. Biblically, the first person that we see who rests is literally God himself. So the only person in all of creation, the uncreated one, who is inexhaustible. He never sleeps, never slumbers. He doesn't ever need a break. He doesn't ever get tired. He himself took a day of rest. And we see this in Genesis chapter 1. So after the 6 days of creating, God just went on this amazing 6-day creation spree where he made everything. And then on day 7, he took a day of rest. And what's really fun is who did he make the day before? The day before, God made Adam. So Adam was created on the 6th day. So the 7th day, which would have been Adam's first full day of existence, isn't God teaching him how to work the garden and how to be a son of God on the earth and teaching him how to work that first day of Adam's existence? Instead is a day of rest with the Creator himself. God said, out of anything that I could do in all of creation, I want to spend the day doing nothing with you. That's just mind-blowing and so cool to see. And then after we have that example, we know that God commanded rest in the 10 Commandments. Law number 3 was to observe the Sabbath and keep it holy. Rest was such a big deal to God that he commanded the Israelites to rest their animals, to rest their slaves. And then as we see more, as you dive into this concept of rest, God commanded the land to be rested. He commanded rest for all of creation. And that's a very different picture than the picture of God that I was raised with in the legalism and in Christianity. In Christianity, I felt like, and I was told that I needed to slave for God. I needed to lay my life down, that the poor and the needy, they were there and they needed me. The weight of the world was my responsibility. And God was pleased when I was throwing down 100% of the time. So I felt guilty when I rested. And not only did I feel guilty when I rested, but I was praised for the self-sacrifice. I was praised for not resting, for the amount of sacrifice that I laid down, the self-martyrdom, laying my life down for others. The church was praising it as something beautiful and pleasing to God. There was also this pressure that I had to do my best, and only then would God cover the rest. I had to swing 100% of the time. And that level of performance is exhausting. That inability to rest is actually disobedience, which we'll read about in Hebrews 11 in a little bit. But for now, my world was blown up realizing that God was not pleased with my striving. He didn't look down and say, man, look at her. She didn't take a day off. I'm so proud of her. I'm actually breaking God's law. I actually am not operating from rest, and I'm doing something that He doesn't want me to do. So though we're not under the law anymore, rest is still foundational to us. So let's read Hebrews 11. This is a long passage, so just bear with me, but I want you to hear everything that Paul has to say. This is Hebrews 4, 1 through 11. God's promises of entering His rest still stands. So we ought to tremble with fear that some of you might fail to experience it. Experience what? Experience His rest. For this good news that God has prepared this rest has been announced to us, just as it was to them. But it did them no good because they didn't share the faith of those who listened to God. For only we who believe can enter His rest. As for the others, God said, in my anger I took an oath, they will never enter my place of rest. Even though this rest has been ready since He made the world. We know it is ready because of the place in the Scriptures where it mentions the seventh day. On the seventh day, God rested from all His work. But in the other passage, God said, they will never enter my place of rest. So God's rest is there for people to enter. But those who heard first this good news failed to enter because they disobeyed God. So God set another time for entering His rest, and that time is today. God announced this through David, much later in the words already quoted. Today, when you hear His voice, don't harden your hearts. Now, if Joshua had succeeded in giving them this rest, God would not have spoken about another day of rest still to come. So, there is a special rest still waiting for the people of God. For all who have entered God's rest have rested from their labors, just as God did after creating the world. So let us do our best to enter that rest. But if we disobey God, as the people of Israel did, we will fall. Now you see why I wanted to read all 11 verses. This is like heavy-hitting proof that this rest is for us. No, we're not under the law anymore, but we have a rest that God has given to us, and it is disobedience for us not to enter that rest. So for me to slave and self-martyr and never enter into rest because I need to strive for God, it's actually disobedience, and I will fall, according to what whoever the author of Hebrews is saying there. Before we get into the different aspects of rest, I do want to point out that rest is not lazy. How do we know this? My favorite story about this is in the Bible with the story of Noah. So Noah's name means rest. And Noah did the biggest job of human history ever, still to this day. To my knowledge, no one has ever worked since then on a project for 120 years. So Noah, the man named Rest, was given the biggest job in human history ever, creating the ark. And it took him over a century to do it. And yet, his inheritance, his identity, his name was rest. So rest doesn't mean that we're going to be lazy and not accomplish things. We'll actually be able to accomplish more things on the earth as we're operating from a place of health and rest. In stillness, we're going to be able to have more strategy, more authority, and more clarity in which we operate and live from. So rest is key for us. Jesus put it this way: the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So it is not our job to be enslaved to the Sabbath. We are not under the Sabbath, but rather the Sabbath was made for us. It is a gift for us. It is an invitation for us. It is strategy for us. The last thing I want to share real quick before we get into the facets of rest. So, rest and ministry still go hand in hand. How do we know this? Because Jesus still rested. The way that I was taught about ministry and my need to take care of the world and the responsibility of everything being on me, if I were to send Jesus to the earth based on my understanding of God in the legalism and churchianity, Jesus, he would have started doing ministry as soon as he hit his bar mitzvah. As soon as he's an adult, go, serve. You could teleport everywhere. You could preach the gospel to everybody. You could heal everything. You don't need to sleep. You don't even need to walk. You could teleport and hit everybody on the earth before you're 30. But we don't see that in Jesus' life. He had 33 years that he was on the earth. He did ministry from 30 to 33. So in that 3 years, out of 33 years, that's less than 10% of his life was doing ministry. And then beyond that, within that 3 years, Jesus still walked around. He still slept. He still walked away from the crowd to go and pray. And still took naps. So we see that even with Jesus, our example on the earth, Jesus didn't strive. He laid his life down and he served, but he did it from a place of rest. He still observed Sabbath, not out of legalism, but he operated out of rest. And when Jesus came across emergencies like the storm, he was so asleep the disciples had to shake him awake. And when he woke up, he didn't step into fear or chaos or anything else. When Jesus woke up from the storm, he got up and he expected his circumstances to match his restful, peaceful, internal reality. And he spoke to the storm and he said, "Be still." Even with Jesus' close friend Lazarus, when Lazarus got sick and died, Jesus didn't drop everything that he was doing and run to his friend. So in an emergency situation, Jesus still was being led by the Father from a place of rest, from a place of peace, from a place of confidence, knowing that God's timing is perfect. And so we can be governed by the tyranny of the urgent. We can be governed by emergencies. We can be governed by the demands of this world. And as long as we are choosing to let those things govern us, we are going to be subjected to them. And the enemy will make sure that there is always a streamline of crisis and emergencies before us to keep us from resting. Or, as sons, we are invited to live from a place of authority, from a place of shalom, and from a place of rest, so that we can strategically, clear-minded, and powerfully transform the earth, bring our internal reality into an outward expression. Okay, so with that, I just wanted to give some permission to rest, some basically also conviction to rest, sharing about the disobedience, sharing about God's heart, our example of Jesus on the earth. What did that look like? Again, there's still so much more to flesh out with these things. I'm just giving a crash course on rest in this episode. But I want to get to the how-to. So far in my journey, I can basically frame out 7 different facets of rest. And you'll see this picture here. Okay. So, since we're multi-dimensional beings, it just makes sense that walking out rest is going to be multifaceted. So that's what these 7 facets are, is incorporating the body, soul, spirit facets of rest. So as you see in this chart, we're going to go through each of these 7 in a brief and condensed fashion. So spiritual rest is being at peace with God. Pretty simple. God is already at peace with us because of Jesus, but a lot of times we don't feel that we're at peace with God. We walk on eggshells and we feel apprehensive. We're waiting for God to smite us with the bat, type of a thing. So when we believe that we are at peace with God, we enter the beginning stages of spiritual rest, and rest will just continue to deepen as we embrace our journey and our process. So spiritual rest is being at peace with God, but also realizing that we're on an eternal journey with God, and there's not timelines or deadlines or should or have to or striving. It's being free from striving just to be in our process of development. So spiritual rest is foundational because we are spiritual beings. So that's why we started with spiritual rest. Next, emotional rest. Emotional rest is being at peace within our emotions. Kind of explanatory there. But emotional rest is experiencing and walking out shalom regardless of our circumstances. So our soul being whole because of Jesus. So there's a lot that can be said about emotions. I wrote a whole book on it, so I'll put that in the link description. There's a lot of videos on my channel talking about going on encounters and healing our soul and walking in shalom. So check out the other videos for emotional rest. But that's what emotional rest is. So walking, spiritual rest, being at peace with God. Emotional rest, being at peace within our emotions. Mental rest is rest within our problem solving, the cognitive abilities, the busy mind. So yes, there are emotions in the mental. There's going to be mixture with these facets, but they're different enough. Like the mental is the problem solving. It's the doing side. Emotions is the feely side of our brain. So with the mental rest, it's intentionally setting aside time, whether it's a day of Sabbath and taking the whole day off, or also including taking like an hour before bed, or short breaks throughout the day where you choose to stop thinking about all the problem solving and all the fixing and all the doing and just be and be still. Again, it's intentionally slowing down our racing minds. Social rest. So social rest again has to do with our emotions and our connections and that heart side of it. But social rest is basically balancing three things at once. It's recharging your social batteries through solitude, so being alone. It's also recharging social batteries through life-giving relationships. So intentionally scheduling time with restorative friends, family members, where you're feeling filled up after hanging out with them. And then balancing all the other social events. So work, school, friends, family, ministry, balancing everything else, doing those things from a place of rest. So it's putting up boundaries and reducing things that are draining so that you can do social events within your capacity from a place of rest. So social rest has three things that it's balancing, but it is dealing with you interacting with the world. Not all of our social events are life-giving. We have work to do. We have ministry where we choose to lay our lives down and pour into people, but we do those things from a place of rest. So it's not cutting out everything because there is an element of living in the world, but it's doing it from a powerful place. And Jesus displayed this with leaving the crowd to go and pray. We see multiple times in scriptures where it talks about Jesus withdrawing to go and be alone with the Lord. And so he didn't pull away from all ministry. He just, when he realized that his rest capacity is in need, he would pull away, go reset with the Lord, and then go back and be with people so that he could operate from a place of shalom and a place of love. Now, physical rest. Physical rest is the most obvious one because everybody sleeps at night. But more than just sleeping, physical rest also looks like taking a non-exerting walk, stretching, taking a bath, red light therapy, sauna, things that are healing and restorative to the body, scheduling a massage, things that are going to be healing for the different body systems. It can even include fasting because fasting is resting your digestive system. So the body, it's multifaceted. It's got 12-ish different systems that govern it, but it is intentionally resting the body with different systems in spite of the different systems or including the different systems. Okay, sensory rest. So sensory rest is closely tied to physical rest, but it is specifically focusing on the nervous system of the body. So the nervous system is the command center for the body. It sends and receives all the messages, and we live in a highly stimulated world. We're constantly getting information and emotional information and physical stimulation from our environment around us. and it can put our nervous system into chronic stress where it just constantly lives in a state of fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight, your body doesn't heal and your body doesn't truly rest. And so sensory rest is specifically reducing external stressors, whether it's emotional stressors and physical stressors, reducing physical input, dimming the lights, having no screen time where you're shutting out, all screens, reducing loud noises. As a young mom, like scheduling time away from the kids, because kids can be highly stimulating, especially when they're young. It's just, they're constantly pulling on you and melting down, and there's just all sorts of stimulation all the time from the kids. So it is specifically focusing on the nervous system and resting the nervous system. And last but not least, we have creative rest. Now, this is the oddest facet of the 7, and it finally doesn't overlap with the others because all the other facets are about stilling, like slowing down, being still, and healing. This facet is about making time for things that make you come alive. Yes, it's a facet of rest because it's about partaking in or creating beauty without the pressure of outcome or stress. So a part of our nature is to enjoy, partake in, and create beauty. God is a creator and we are made in his image, so we are also creators. And all of us have something that make us come alive. And so creative rest is choosing to prioritize things and schedule things that bring about delight and joy in your life. We feel refreshed when we do things that we love. So it's a different type of rest and a different type of refreshment, but it still fits within these 7 facets of rest because it's restoring and renewing to our soul, and that's what rest does. So creative rest is setting aside time to be childlike in wonder and curiosity so that we can cultivate creative rest and delight in our lives. So that was a quick, very, very quick overview to these 7 facets of rest. The last thing that I want to share about rest before I let you go is that rest is a muscle that we grow. It is something that we cultivate. Rest is not something that happens by accident. It requires us to be intentional and proactive. God took a day of rest, and he commanded the Israelites to take a day of rest. It is something that we have to do and we have to choose into. It's not something that will happen by accident. Rest is not a pause in the journey. It's actually a very much part of our journey and our walk with God. And rest actually cultivates sustainability. It helps us do things for the long haul because we're operating from a place of peace and health and wholeness. So rest is so much more than just a lack of activity. Rest is actually a proactive thing that we choose into to restore and heal our soul and all of creation. So I hope that I've piqued your interest in this topic of rest. I hope that you have felt an invitation to study it and to explore it with Jesus. So please go pursue Jesus. Remember, he is the source. Ask him about rest. Ask him about the different facets of rest and where you have different rest deficits in. And then go after those things with Jesus. Rest is a powerful tool for us. It's a wonderful invitation, and it is the kindness of the Lord all over it. So I bless you in the journey of pursuing it and connecting with Jesus and exploring rest. I'll see you next time.